podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And welcome to another edition of Media Matters for Anfield Index. And ladies and gents, it's another in our instalment of Stat Me Up. So let's hit with the headlines, people. That Liverpool got 3 points last night in their game at Sheffield United. They are second in the league. They are 2 points behind leaders Arsenal. They have 34 in total. But even more importantly than that, it's not January. There's no Luis Diaz. There's no Cody Gakpo. But Anfield Index has a new signing. So I've got him today, ladies and gents. The one and only Bence Bocsák. Ben, how are we?
Yeah, it's great to be on and it's great to be involved. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because, I'm going to start asking you questions. I'm going to put you on the spot and we're going to talk, ladies and gents, the normal. We'll talk last night. We'll talk the big stats. We've got to, Ben, talk about injuries. We cannot escape that at all. That's going to be a talk. And probably, as people would guess, that is naturally going to turn towards January and a certain window that is just round the corner and the implications on that. And we'll talk implications in regards to what we believe should happen. And as we know, that might not be what Jurgen Klopp is currently thinking, but we haven't got too long to find that out. However, let's rewind to last night. We won, Ben. 2-0 away, Sheffield United. It was another visit to the Dross, which was interesting on the back of the draw against Luton. This was a test in one way with the injuries just starting to pile up. But 2-0, clean sheet. Looking at the positives, Van Dijk, Szoboszlai, 2 good goals. It wasn't pretty, and that's me saying that. That was my honest thought. So that's my gut takeaway from it, Ben. It wasn't pretty. But bear in mind the backdrop, the new manager bounce for Sheffield United. What were your honest thoughts on the performance last night?
My honest thoughts, we'll take that. It's a good result. I was pretty happy with the overall performance. Liverpool weren't spectacular, but they got the job done. I never thought for a moment that Sheffield United were going to get back into the game, even with 1-0 up. Yeah, that was maybe a potential contentious penalty decision, but I think it would have been very soft to give that to Sheffield.
Yeah.
And overall, I thought Liverpool were just okay. Nothing phenomenal, but they got the job done. And, considering this was a midweek Premier League game away from home, like you mentioned, the manager bounce, that's all you can ask for. You're not going to win 4 or 5-0 every single game. And sometimes you just need to get these results, especially when you're competing for the title.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think maybe, and it's not being accusatory, but I think people are just forgetting, if you look at that schedule, Ben, recently, we played Thursday against Lask. We then had the Sunday against Fulham. Now, we know that was going to take something out the tank because we went to the well again, didn't we, in that one with a lot of the same players. And then it's Wednesday night. So the last 3 games have been Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday, i.e. these boys have turned around 3 times in 6 days. So when people were saying, they're a bit leggy, it's not fast flowing, bear in mind what you said, like the new manager away, who it is, how we struggle. I'm kind of maybe surprised a little bit that people expected any different. And I'm sure you saw as well at the same time. Look at the other results. Arsenal scraped by Luton. Let's be honest about that. It's a last-minute winner, isn't it, there in that regard? Manchester City, we saw that. as well at the same time, and what's happening there, Aston Villa, because that's going to be a terrible place to go for everyone. But yeah, against that backdrop, 3 points, job done. Now, this will be an interesting one. There was mixed performances, I would say, from different people. Who would you give man of the match to? But also, who would you say, I thought they had a good night for us at the same time?
I think it's got to be Trent. Just because I was looking through the stats over the last year, and he created 8 chances in that game.
Wow.
And I don't think he's ever done that in a Premier League game before.
Jeez.
He's created 7 a few times. In 2019, he created 7 against Tottenham, which was just 1 less than Tottenham created in that entire game. But 8 chances, if I am correct. I was looking over the stats. I don't think he's ever done that before.
Jeez.
So, he had a pretty dominant game. I thought he was really good. Obviously put in a great corner. Showed off maybe a bit too much in the lead up to that corner, as it went viral on social media. But overall, I think Andrew Beasley obviously did a stat about how good Liverpool has been since he's been transitioned into the midfield, and Liverpool are leading the Premier League table since that has happened. And I think it was evident yesterday as well. He's really, really good.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we've talked about it before as well. The hybrid, the box formation, the Trent formation, whatever people want to label it as, and people have naturally had their concerns, the demands on Konate, the right side, all those types of things. But exactly like you said, as Andrew Beasley tweeted in those, I think it was 27 or 28 games, Liverpool are top in that period. That's got to come into consideration. And like you said, and you might be semi to low impressed with this, because I know I was doing Stat Me Up with you, Ben. So I did a bit of research as well. Trent now has many Premier League assists as Eric Cantona as well, hasn't he? And that's one was apparently an enigmatic Frenchman with the collar popped up, and one is the right back, as a commentator called him the other day. So yeah, I agree with that. I thought Trent, Virgil were Virgin on man of the match. I thought the leaders really stepped up last night as well. One player I did want to talk about, because I know stats-wise you posted quite a lot about him, but it was interesting. And I didn't know this. I have to show my ignorance on this. Endo, that he hasn't played that much. We can't pretend he's been a regular, but when he has played, his stats have been pretty good, actually, overall on the whole. And I thought last night, for me personally, there's not a huge sample pool, but his best game for Liverpool overall for me by some distance. How did you think he honestly did last night? Was it good in the context, or how would you assess him overall?
I quite liked his performance. I don't think he was spectacular, but Liverpool weren't spectacular in general. I think he did what he had to do. Won 9 duels out of 14, which is quite good. He won quite a few aerial duels as well, if I remember correctly, which, considering his height, I think he's only around 5'9", 5'10". So not the tallest player on the pitch, but he still won a fair amount of aerial duels, which I quite like. I think that's something he worked on a lot in the Bundesliga, and obviously we've seen him score a headed goal as well for Liverpool. So he's got a bit of a threat when it comes to that kind of area of his game. And I think what impressed me the most, though, was just his ability on the ball. People perhaps, because he was called the Duel King in the Bundesliga, expected him to thrive in the defensive situations, which he did last night.
Yeah.
But I think in the way he brings out the ball, his sort of passes, he's really composed. And I think he does a good job of sort of recycling possession and instigating attacks and moves forward. So yeah, overall, I think that was definitely probably his best performance. Maybe he's had a better performance perhaps in the Europa League or the League Cup. True. Just when you measure up the competition and the opponents, I think we'd probably have to give this one as his best performance overall. Yeah,
in that backdrop as well. And like you said, for not the tallest player, does seem to win. So he's such a good header of the ball as well. Like you said, the goal, the strength, and that's in both ends, in both boxes, as we've seen recently as well. So, yeah, it's interesting how he's strong, but we saw Ryan Gravenberch beaten by John Fleck a few times in the air, and there must be a good foot almost discrepancy between those. But that's probably a different discussion. But with McAllister's injury, we're not fully sure how that is. Wouldn't be the biggest surprise now if Endo does retain that shirt for Palace, especially because they have fresh legs as well. Now, it wouldn't be a stat me up without coming back to this man, as we always do and probably always will, just because of the nature of who he is and what he does. Darwin Núñez. I mean, for the short cameo that he was on the field last night, Ben, it had everything. And I'm not exaggerating that, didn't it? There was those memes galore for Darwin. I mean, you've watched it, you saw it last night. Literally, I think that is a fair description. It had everything. How did you see that performance in the context of his season so far?
I thought it was just pretty much typical Darwin Núñez. That's what we've seen all season. People will talk about the tackle, which I thought was a great challenge, and obviously, even with the new rules, it was a fair challenge, as VAR correctly ruled as well. Obviously, after that great ball into the box, I think that's what you want to see from Darwin, and I think that's what you don't see from other forwards necessarily, who may be getting more goals or assists, but when it comes to Liverpool, it's so important for the striker to be winning challenges and, defending from the front. And that's what we saw from Darwin, and it led to a goal. And I think that's why I still really believe in him. And I think he'll be a Liverpool cult hero for sure. And I think, just got to be patient with him sometimes. When I spoke to his assistant manager who works with him at Almeria, David Badia, he always emphasized how important it was for Darwin to just have confidence. And I think we've seen that now at Liverpool as well. You bring the best out of him when he's fully confident. And he's had a few games now where he didn't get an assist and get a goal, so he must have been frustrated with himself. So now to get that assist, I'm sure he'll be really happy with that, and that will give him a boost. And overall, though, I mean, I don't even think he's doing that bad at stats-wise. If you look at the numbers, if you distill it down, he's still averaging a goal or assist for Liverpool every 78 minutes, which is really good. I mean, for a striker, well, what more can you ask? So I know some people have been a little bit concerned about him. I've seen loads of posts on social media, how many chances he's missed. But that's part and parcel of the game for a forward, Erling Haaland also misses a lot of chances, but maybe Erling Haaland doesn't necessarily contribute with as many challenges or as many chances created as Darwin Núñez. So, there's upsides to his game. And I think overall, if he gets a bit more confidence, if he starts going on a good run, I still expect him to have a really good season with Liverpool. Yeah,
I think you're right. It's almost a fascinating. You can be fascinated, I think, on the negative elements of his game. I get why I'm not disagreeing with what people have said about should he have buried that one-on-one? Probably should. He lifts it. He hit the keeper, but everyone seems fixated on that. What people don't seem fixated on, again, it's like you say, that it's a good, for me personally, people see it differently. I think it's a great tackle. It was also quite a composed ball, wasn't it? The way he kind of sliced through it for Szoboszlai and picked him out that way, because it wouldn't surprise me just rashly tried to whack it across, but it was composed for Darwin. Like you said, confidence as well. I think we've seen in the last few games, confidence has just dipped a little bit, and maybe it's not quite been there. You forget how it does seem to be an arm round the shoulder type of player. He does seem to visibly need that to, really feel lifted and part of it, so to speak. And then the other thing, which, again, if the microscope's on Darwin so much, and I love our players, don't get me wrong, but I didn't see much talk about Cody Gakpo's lack of involvement overall last night. I'd not seen anything that's about Luis Diaz hasn't really been at it, for want of a better phrase, the last few games, and he's played considerable minutes. It's not that, the forwards aren't going through the best of times, maybe, which we'll talk about, but yeah, the heat seems to be very much on Darwin, but hey, another assist, 3 points, and we move on. Now, you've given us a taster from last night. Any other big sort of stats that you called out or stood out to you from players, team-wise, anything like that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to give a shout out to Ibrahim Konate. I know, again, fans were of mixed opinions about his performance last night, but in all fairness, he won 20 duels, which hasn't been done in a Premier League game for the last 3 years. And on top of that, he won 14 aerial duels, which again hasn't been done in the Premier League since the 2015-16 season. So statistically, he was pretty good. And on top of that as well, he completed the most passes in the game too. So he got 95 passes. So you got to say that's, even for someone who divided opinions last night, statistically he put in a pretty solid performance.
Yeah, it's great. Again, Ibou, the focus tends to be, and there was that one where he just kind of miscontrolled it and it rolled to, I think it was Archer for Sheffield United, wasn't it? And he brought him down, yellow card. Yeah, it's a mistake. All, players make mistakes, that happens, but there just seems such a, like you said, fixation, fascination on this. And then, I mean, VAR said it wasn't a penalty, for God's sake. I know people talk about the Shaw, it's an aggressive defender. That's what we want him to be. But it's weird the way people, really honed in on that for almost the way they rated him for last night. But like you said, I mean, Trent creates the most chances. Ibou sets a record in terms of, clearances. Look at how he did with the aerial. It's interesting the way those little things just deviate opinion, isn't it? Or what you want to hone in on, what you want to focus in on.
I think as well, what I wanted to highlight is the amount of work Konate actually has to do in this system.
Crazy.
I mean, it's might not necessarily be from a team point of view. The fact that he had to win 20 duels might not necessarily be a positive thing, but there is a lot being asked of him. So the fact that he's living up to expectations. I think he only lost about 4 duels or something like that. It was very minimal compared to the amount of duels he had to participate in. So the fact that he's being able to do that is a positive on a personal level. On a team level, if you're looking at the overall play, it is a bit of a concern. But so far Liverpool got away with that last night. That wasn't Sheffield United didn't really trouble them at all.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, he plays his part in the clean sheet. There's no two ways about it. I mean, probably that I agree with the positive. Flip it round to the other end, Ben. It's interesting because we're scoring goals at the moment, as we're seeing, but it's not the forwards really, isn't it? They seem to be misfiring somewhat, and I'm putting them all, in that bracket. I know Jota's injured at the moment, but they weren't great against City. Fulham, we needed 4 goals, but from other areas of the team. And last night, yes, Núñez gets the assist coming on, but again, the forward line kind of toiled a bit, so to speak, as well. I mean, what are you putting that down to at the moment? Is it because it can sometimes just be as simple as a sticky patch in the season? You can't expect them to score 5 goals every time. There is a little element of we do, don't we? We used to score in 3, so maybe we put those pressures on them, but is it like a change in formation, stats, anything that you've seen that you put it down to at all at the moment?
I don't know. It's hard to pin down because Liverpool are still creating chances in the last few games. There's been an average of 15 to 20 chances created, or 20 plus chances. So, it's not for a lack of chances. Those players are getting chances and opportunities. Salah is creating a lot. Maybe he's not being on the end of chances as much. I think though part of it has to be down to Diego Jota's absence, because he was in a really good run of form for Liverpool before he got that injury, and his good run of form maybe sort of overshadowed Luis Diaz's lack of output and Akpo's lack of output as well. although in all fairness to Hack, both for club and country, in his last, I think, 10-11 starts, he's got about 9 goal contributions.
Wow.
The bulk of those, I think about half of those obviously have come for the Netherlands, so it's only about half for Liverpool, but he's not doing bad in terms of his output. Just not necessarily all of it has happened in a Liverpool shirt. But yeah, I think for me that the bigger concern of the two of them is Diaz. When he first signed for Liverpool, there was always that sort of concern of his sort of XG numbers. I remember at Porto, he was overperforming his XG by a lot.
Yeah.
And obviously at the time he was going on a bit of a purple patch, and that made things a little bit of a concern from a stats point of view, where he'd be able to carry that on at Liverpool. And I think we have to be realistic and say he hasn't. He's kind of posted the numbers that he posted before that really good season at Porto and before that really good Copa America campaign. And I think he's someone who Liverpool kind of still have to figure out how to get the best out of him from an offensive point of view. And, you know, as well, we mentioned it earlier, with Diaz, the upside to his game was, okay, he wasn't getting as many goals and assists as you would expect from a left winger, especially in comparison to Sadio Mane, who he came to replace. But he had so much energy on the left wing. He was one of the few players in this Liverpool team who actually could win 1-versus-1 duels and situations and beat a man. Obviously, that energy, pressing from the front, coming back to defend as well, all of that was really great. So he kind of overlooked his output. But now I don't even see his overall play being as good. I'm not seeing that energy. I'm not seeing him beating his men in those situations, his opponents. And I think that's the bigger concern of the two rather than his output.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think obviously everything's speculation, but it's not. It wasn't just one injury that he had, didn't he? Because he had the long-term injury which he got against Arsenal last season, and then he came back and re-aggravated, had to have surgery again, didn't he? That type of thing. So I think it's similar. There's that niggling concern. Will he almost get back to that player we saw before then? Like you say, actually, it's interesting when you look, his XG is kind of in line what he's done aside from that purple patch of Porto. So yeah, it will be interesting. And I mean, speaking of injuries, everyone's going to miss Diogo Jota, second top scorer, 8 goals. And it seems to have been a really bad patch, Ben. I don't think there's another way of describing it. I think you think to the last 3 games, City, we lose Alisson right at the end, we lose Jota, sounding like longer term as well. Alisson may be back from United, it sounds like, fingers crossed on that. Then we have the game against Fulham. And obviously, Joel Matip, we now know that absolute disaster, ruptured ligaments, it said, which has all the hallmarks by the sounds of it about for the season. And then even last night, hopefully it's not too bad, but Alexis McAllister, which gets rattled early and apparently intent comes into it. So, you know, that's fine, apparently, even though it doesn't come in with Curtis Jones's VAR decision. Maybe that's a different discussion. But the injuries are just starting to mount up. And I did want to talk about Joel Matip, because there's a sad point and an honest point when I'm saying this. We've got to be realistic, Ben. This could be, or that could have been, the last time we potentially see him in a Liverpool shirt. That's a realistic concern now. If that is the case, what sort of stats do you look at or think with Joel Matip that people should sort of recognise? Because some people are like, oh, he's had a dip last season, but he's come back. I mean, this guy's been big for us, hasn't he, since he signed, really?
This episode is brought to you by Google Pixel, the official fan phone of the NBA and WNBA. The new Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro are built different. How? Take the Audio Magic Eraser tool. It helps block out distracting crowd noise so your play-by-play commentary sounds crystal clear. The only phone engineered by Google brings out the audio you care about so your videos sound as crisp as they look. Learn more at googlestore.com/Pixel NBA. Audio Magic Eraser requires Google Photos app. May not work on all audio elements.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, But I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit libertyshield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Absolutely. And I think, considering the fact that it was a free transfer, he got to go down as one of the best free transfers of all time. But like you mentioned, yes, his form did dip over the course of the last 2 seasons or so. However, I think the real disappointing thing about the fact that he's got injured now was that, in my opinion, he was almost getting back to his prime Matip form. He's been really good this season, and the stats sort of back that up as well. I've got it up here. So Y-Scout does this statistic for possession-adjusted interceptions, which measures how much possession a team has and in turn how many interceptions a player is making. So it's a sort of fairer measurement of how many interceptions a defender makes. And for centre-backs in the Premier League this season, only one player, Romero at Tottenham, has averaged more possession-adjusted interceptions than Matip.
Wow.
To be fair, all of Liverpool's defenders have been really good in that metric. Konate and Van Dijk also rank in the top 6. So credit to Liverpool. I think that sums up how good Liverpool's defence has been this season. Obviously got the best defensive record as well with just 14 goals conceded. So I think Matip has played a key role in that. And then the other thing, which we don't necessarily see from other Liverpool defenders, is his ability on the ball, the way he runs forward, those forward runs. I think if this is his last game for Liverpool, those are the ones that I'm going to miss the most, when he just gets the ball, beats a couple of opposition players. And I think when Liverpool have so much possession and are playing against a defensive low block, to have a centre-back like that who can beat a couple of players and open up a bit more space for the attackers is so crucial. And it's really rare to find in football as well. Again, looking at the stats for progressive runs out of centre-backs in the Premier League, Matip is again in second place behind Ruben Dias. So again, just, you get the sense of what I was saying, that he was really getting back to his prime. And the fact that this injury has happened now is a really real shame that it's happened. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, God, if there's any doubt just how good Joel Matip has been for us, the fact, like you say, in those two big stats behind, and literally there's one player in the entire Premier League ahead of him. So overall, you'd probably think across the board that he's coming out, if not top, right up there. And like you say, he's been such a weapon for us as well. When the game's time is congested, like you said, you're thinking, what's going to happen? Sometimes just a Joel Matip slalom style run's been incredible. And I still think back to even last season when we were struggling, that game against Leeds where we just kind of dribbled past a few, knocked it, played him in and he put it in. So yeah, it is a shame, but the indications are that, we have to suspect it could well be his last game. I mean, with the Matip injury and the players we mentioned as well, Ben, and that's, let's be honest, that's on top of Robbo, Thiago, Bajcetic. It's just starting to sort of mount up, shall we say. Do you put us sort of at breaking point, as in we really can't afford it, or do you think we're already a bit past that, we're going to be seriously stretched? How do you see it at the moment?
I mean, I think the Matip injury has sort of put Liverpool on a breaking point, because now we're probably going to have to see a bit more of Kwanzaa, which overall is not necessarily a bad thing. I think Kwanzaa has been really good and it's a great opportunity for him to make his mark. However, from an ideal point of view, I mean, obviously you're going into this festive period, which is one of the most important periods of the season. You don't necessarily be wanting to play the centre-back who's only played a handful of games. I have faith in Kwanzaa. I think he will do really well and I'm confident, but just from an ideal perspective, you'd rather put Matip in there and you'd rather play him. And obviously, like you mentioned with Robertson's injury, you're probably having to rotate between Gomez and Tsimikas for left back, which again is not necessarily ideal. However, when it comes to the midfield, I think midfield, Liverpool is fine. Offensively as well, I think Liverpool got enough. We're quite fortunate as well that the last game of the Europa League doesn't really matter.
So, dead rubber.
You know, I'm expecting a pretty reserve side playing that one. And I think the concern is just defensively whether Liverpool have enough depth. And that's something we'll find out in December. Hopefully it won't be detrimental to this title chase. And obviously there's an opportunity in January to address those concerns. So it's not necessarily the end of the world, the worst situation to have this many injury problems. You just got to get through December and then you've got an opportunity to address the problems and see where you're at injury-wise as well.
Yeah, true. I think it probably gets highlighted because, like you say, Matip's done so well. There was even a case that people were saying he is the preferred partner, isn't he, for VBD? Look at the numbers this season. And Konate, there's naturally going to be those concerns against not his ability. Look at last night, as it said, his resoluteness, resilience, whatever you want to call it, because he does pick up a lot of muscle strains, as we said there. And yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because Jarell Quansah has been superb when he's been called upon. We see the talent. We've talked about him before. It's still big shoes to fill with Joel Matip, isn't it, in that regard, and coming in and performing to the same level. And the other games that are coming up, as you mentioned, we're playing title chasers or big competitive games. So it's a lot of pressure on a young man. I mean, this is going to steer towards the chat and January. It is round the corner, let's be honest, Ben. We are not far from it. There's a lot of games still, but we are not far from it. I know you'll have seen this. There's a polarisation, it seems, at the moment. There's the polarisation of these boys are doing well. Quansah's a talent. Bradley's back. Joe Gomez could also move into centre-back, that type of thing as well. We could do this, don't need to be panicking or looking even. And now, naturally, I know you're going to have seen it. As soon as the Matip news came out, well, we definitely need a new centre-half now. There's no excuse for not buying a centre-half in January. As Twitter, social media, etc., loves that polarisation. I want to ask you in two different ways, because I do want to get almost your thoughts, your take on it. But I think this is almost as important as ever. What does your gut tell you Jurgen Klopp is thinking about it or seeing it? Because as we know, Jurgen Klopp thought about the defence very differently in the summer as to we did, and we didn't see a single reinforcement. How do you think he might be seeing it now? What's your gut telling you?
I think it's the same as the summer.
Yeah.
I think that really he probably didn't expect Quansah to be as good as he has been. So that's been a reassurance. And I think I wrote a piece for the website talking about how this is a big opportunity for Quansah. And I think December could be the sort of month that decides what Liverpool is going to do in the transfer window. If he steps up, if he takes those chances like he has been doing, he's been taking his chances, then there's a good chance Liverpool won't do business unless there is something extraordinarily good that comes up, like Luis Diaz or Cody Gakpo, when Liverpool think, we have to get this player now because someone else is interested in them, or if it's the right opportunity. I don't see necessarily that many players being in that situation, especially when it comes to centre-backs.
Yeah.
Most teams like to bring in centre-backs in the summer just to integrate them, have them go through the whole pre-season and everything else. So yeah, I think it's a bit more difficult to bring in a defender unless you're Virgil van Dijk in the January window.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's a bit easier to integrate attackers, and that's what Liverpool has been doing in the last few transfer windows. But like I said, if an opportunity comes up, I think Liverpool will still go for it. But it's not like they're going to be 100% in on buying a centre-back, like, for example, we were 100% in on buying a midfielder, or more than just one midfielder, let's be honest, over the summer.
Yeah, definitely.
I think is going to be more sort of what we have seen in the last few January windows, where Liverpool sort of exploring things behind the scenes, but not necessarily actively or aggressively searching for the right player.
Yeah, and my gut is telling me the same, that as it stands, there's a bit of Jurgen Klopp thinking, well, Quansah's good enough or he's not. And understandably, he has real belief in that player. As we know, for anyone's thinking we're shutting everything down, the situation could change and there's another knock and all sorts of things. But I do think my gut's telling me Jurgen Klopp is seeing it the same way. I mean, I suppose two parts to this. For you personally, because we talked about how Jurgen's seeing it very much, do you see it differently in the sense of, do you think that we should be looking and even linking it to obviously the stats that we talked about? Or is there a case of, no, as you mentioned before, look at how good the defence is, those options? But obviously then there's the counter of, well, Matip was a part of that and now he's not going to be. How are you honestly seeing it from a personal point of view?
I think my heart says no, because I really like Quansah and I want him to be given an opportunity. And I think he can step up. I've been watching him for a while. He does have a bit of Matip about him as well, I have to say.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've seen him play left side, did centre-back for most of his first-team senior career, but he prefers to play on the right. He's played a lot on the right side. And I remember him playing for England under 19s and just going on those mazy runs, sort of Matip-esque runs. He's really composed on the ball. Obviously, we've seen a little bit of that against Leicester when he went on that run and got the assist. So I really like him and I think he's got a lot of potential. I think he's probably one of the best centre-backs Liverpool's academy has produced in the last decade for sure.
Yeah.
But maybe even the last 2 decades if we're looking at it, because it's not got a lot of competition in that area. So yeah, my heart says stick with Quansah unless something crazy or, another injury happens. Konate picking up a knock, which is very possible, obviously. Gomez as well, he's quite injury prone, and Van Dijk himself, he can pick up a few knocks too. And that's why my rational sort of head is thinking maybe we should be looking at a potential transfer. It's just a difficult market. I'm not seeing too many players who could come into Liverpool straight away and make a difference. There's a few on the short list, but I think, I'm just not seeing a Cody Gakpo or a Luis Diaz or a Virgil van Dijk, that those kind of players who are going to be available in January, because the kind of players that Liverpool want to bring in, you want to bring in someone who could play in the starting 11 and who could slot into that Liverpool team right now, which is there are very few players like that in world football. And those clubs that they're playing for are not going to be wanting to let that player go in the January window when, most of those clubs are in Europe fighting for Europe in the league or league titles in their respective leagues. And I think that's why it would be a very difficult sort of transfer to pull off. Centre backs are the most important sort of positions on the field almost. And I think it's just a bit more difficult to get that transfer in January. And that's why, realistically speaking, I don't see Liverpool necessarily making that move. But like you said, that could change. Something could come up, or Liverpool could find out, actually, there is X and X player who, the club is willing to do business for whatever reason. And then obviously if that opportunity arises and it's a player that you like, it's a player that's on the short list, and it's a player that the scouting team believes in and thinks they can come in and step up and be the right fit, then you got to do it, I think. But it's just finding those opportunities, and realistically speaking, in the winter window, it's difficult, especially when there's AFCON going on, when there's the Asian Cup going on. So 2 international tournaments on top of everything else, it's going to make the January window a bit of a convoluted one, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree, and it makes logical sense. And I know people listening, it's probably not what everyone wants to hear. I know they want to all hear us talk, we're going to sign X, Y, and Z, and those types of things. But there is the element, and we even talked about it before, Conor Bradley's back as well now. So that's your right back cover, so Joe Gomez can slot inside. There is the element, almost like we said, if we believe in Kwanzaa, and we all talk about as much as we say, we do, with that real ceiling that he has, well, there's only one way of proving it, so to speak, isn't there? Or it's just talk until then at the same time. And yes, Matip is a hammer blow. It does feel that way. But as you also mentioned, the key thing to think about, people, how hard is that market for all those reasons, and what would we be being asked to part with, shall we say, to get who we want? I think that might play an important part in that. So yeah, we won't have long to find out, will we, Ben? But it all goes into the pot, so to speak, to see and wait for. I mean, the final question, because I know you talked about, we were chatting before about short-term memories and obviously going back to the Roy Hodgson days. I mean, we'll revisit our old gaffer on Saturday morning, won't we, type of thing. And it's an interesting one, because again, it's like there's another backdrop to this, isn't he? They were booed off last night, Palace, in their defeat at home against Bournemouth. There's pressure. Good old Hodge makes some comments as per normal, where it feels like he's put his foot in it. But that being said, it's Liverpool. It's a team in the lower reaches. It's away. It's 12:30. This script maybe writes itself quite easily either way. Just last question I really want you to sort of think about. What you're feeling for Saturday. What you're thinking in terms of how it'll go, who might get the nod, that type of thing.
I mean, touching wood, I do think I am feeling quietly confident that this is going to be a relatively easy game. I don't think it's going to be really easy, because I'm fully expecting 11 men behind the ball, Roy Hodgson going, full defensive low block. But what we have seen this season is that Liverpool have brought in players who can deal with that low block. They've changed the system. They've brought Trent into the middle, who's more effective in breaking down those defensive low blocks. And I think Liverpool hasn't really struggled breaking down defences this season. Even the Luton game, which people will highlight, Liverpool created plenty of chances to make that game a really comfortable one.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not necessarily concerned that much about the type of football that we're expecting Roy Hodgson to play and to come up against, because I think it might have been Liverpool's Achilles heels in the past, but now you've got players who like Szoboszlai, like McAllister, like Elliott as well. He's been really good. Gravenberch, who've all got those little skills that you need, whether that's being able to beat a man, putting in a good cross or a pass. They've got all those skills that you need to break down a defensive wall. And on top of that as well, they've got the energy to track back and cover, especially Szoboszlai, I think, has been key in that. And I think it's no coincidence that when Luton did score that goal from that counter-attack, he wasn't on the pitch.
No.
And I think had he been on the field, maybe things might have been different, but I can see why he was subbed off against Luton, because he was really poor. But I do think it helps that you've got this energy in midfield now that kind of protects Liverpool from being counter-attacked as much as they once were throughout the whole of last season, really. So yeah, I'm feeling relatively confident. I think given that McAllister might not be 100%, I think I'm expecting Endo to stay in that role. I think he did a good job. I think Szoboszlai probably, I know he played the full 90, but he'll probably start. And then I think Gravenberch didn't really necessarily impress me in the last game. I had a feeling Jones might be given a starting berth in this game. And then obviously defensively, I think Tsimikas might come into this one. He's good at creating chances. I kind of expect him to be key in this one. Obviously Alexander-Arnold, Van Dijk and Konate probably are going to be the centre-backs for me. I think as much as Kwanzaa might have a shot, I think Konate, he's sort of, he put in a really impressive performance. And, you know, with the next midweek game being that Europa League tie, he'll get a rest, he'll get a week's rest, probably. So I think he should play that game, really, because he'll be rested and Liverpool won't necessarily be worried about him picking up muscle strains. Kelleher will probably start and goal, and then up top, I think Nunez will come in, and obviously Salah will start on the right, and then it's going to be interesting to see who gets the nod on the left, because obviously between Hakpo and Diaz, neither of them were that impressive. I have a feeling Klopp will stick with Diaz just because if you can get the best out of him, that one-on-one ability, the way he can beat his opponents, Liverpool don't really have that from anyone else on the field. And when you're playing such a defensive low block, you need a player like that. And I think it's a bit of a risk, but the high reward that Diaz brings with him in terms of his ability to break down defences with his running, with his sort of dribbling skills, is something that will go in his favour. And I kind of expect him to start. And obviously he was the one who was subbed off quite early alongside Salah as well. So he's got a bit of a rest as well.
Yeah, definitely. It will be fascinating to see. There is, like you say, a few different decisions, and in a positive sense, quite a lot of fresh players necessarily as well, not played too many minutes, which will factor into this because of such the quick turnaround. I mean, I'll be honest, a win with no injuries, I will take all day long ahead of a week till, well, the dead rubber, but the United game, which everyone's going to hone in on. So, yeah, fingers crossed. The next time we're talking, we may even be slightly higher in the table, and we know where that is, Ben. But all it really leaves me to say is thank you very much for the time. Thank you for the stats again, as normal. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, pleasure.
Good stuff. And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters Stat Me Up for Anfield Index.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.